Let me thank Shalanda Young, the acting director of OMB, for being with us. And let me thank Senator Graham for his help as ranking member. A federal budget speaks to who we are as a nation and where we want to be in the future. And I think, as everybody knows, this last year has been one of the worst years in our lifetimes for our country and, in fact, for the world. In the United States, we have endured the worst public health crisis in 100 years. We have lost over some 600,000 people to COVID, and we have also endured the worst economic collapse since the Great Depression of the 1930s. The very good news is I believe we are making significant progress in fighting our way out of both of those disasters. In terms of the pandemic, more and more Americans are being vaccinated, and the death rate is going down significantly. In my own state of Vermont, we're up to about 80% of our people have been vaccinated, and that type of trend is going on all over the country. Obviously, we still have an enormous amount of work to do, but the good news is we are making progress. Economically, we are also moving forward in the right direction. Millions of jobs have been created in the last few months as the economy reopens all across America. And one of the reasons, in my view, for our success has been the American Rescue Plan that the President signed into law in March. $1,400 direct payment that about 85% of our people received was enormously helpful in easing the anxiety and the pain and the distress that so many people were feeling. I don't know if any of you had the opportunity to talk to people who received those checks, but for a family of four, that was just life-saving. The American Rescue Plan, in a major way, has begun to cut childhood poverty because of the $3,600 child tax credit that we are providing to working families all across America. During the pandemic in my state, and I expect in all of your states, there were long lines of people lining up for emergency food. Hard to believe that's taking place in America. It was. We are making progress in reducing hunger in America. We are expanding, as a result of the American Rescue Plan, health care for people who need it. We're improving educational opportunities. We're providing summer and after-school programs for our kids. The American Rescue Plan provided an extra $300 a week in unemployment benefits to millions of workers who lost their jobs through no fault of their own. And the American Rescue Plan also is preventing millions of Americans from being thrown out onto the streets because they could not afford their rent. It is also preventing over 1 million workers and retirees from seeing their pensions slashed by up to 60%. In other words, that is a very significant piece of legislation that came at a time when working families in this country desperately needed help. But let us be clear. While we are making progress in protecting working families, an enormous amount of work remains before us. In the richest country in the history of the world, the working families of this country continue to struggle economically, with millions of our people continuing to live in desperation. Sometimes inside the Beltway, we can forget that reality. But literally speaking, 3 blocks from this building, there are people sleeping in tents out on the street, and the desperation exists from one end of this country to the other in every one of our states. Real wages, inflation accounted for wages in America, are lower today than they were 48 years ago. Think about that. Huge explosion in productivity, in technology, average American worker in real wages making less than he or she did 48 years ago. And frighteningly, and the young people know this, the younger generation stand an excellent chance, if we don't turn it around, of having a lower standard of living than their parents. In other words, we're moving in exactly the wrong direction. Today in America, over half of our people are living paycheck to paycheck, and millions are trying to get by on $8, $9, $10 an hour which in my view is a starvation wage. In terms of health care, we remain the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people, and yet we pay the highest prices in the world for health care. 90 million people are uninsured. 1 out of 4 people cannot afford the cost of a prescription drug their doctor prescribes because we pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Over 500,000 Americans are homeless today, and some 18 million households spend at least half of their incomes in housing. How the hell do you survive when you spend half of your income in housing? Meanwhile, while working families struggle, the very richest people in this country are doing unbelievably well. 2 people own more wealth than the bottom 40% of the American nation. And let me be as clear as I can be. The decisions that we make as a Congress will determine the very future of this nation. I'm not just talking about the movement toward authoritarianism and the attacks on democracy, which we are seeing every day. We are determining whether or not we are going to have an economy that works for all of us or just the very wealthiest people in this country. And in my view, the budget that President Biden has submitted to Congress constitutes a significant step forward for the working families in this country. Now, he has done his job, his staff has done their job. They have given us an excellent budget. It is our job to take that budget, to refine it, and to make it a document that works for all of our people. At a time when tens of millions of Americans continue to struggle economically, the president's budget would create millions of good-paying jobs, underline good-paying jobs, in this country by rebuilding our crumbling roads, bridges, water systems, wastewater plants. We have talked about infrastructure. Debbie, how many years have we talked about it? Decades since we have been here. Infrastructure. Republicans talk about it. Democrats talk about it. Every state in this country has a crumbling infrastructure. We have done nothing or very little. Now is the time to put our people back to work rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. We need to build millions of units of affordable housing. We need to combat climate change. The scientists are very clear. Every day that we delay is another day that we endanger the well-being of our children and our grandchildren with more droughts, more floods, more extreme weather disturbances. That's the bad news. The good news is that we can create millions of good-paying jobs going forward in addressing climate change, and that is certainly incorporated in the president's budget. The president's budget extends the child tax credit for at least 5 years. No, in America, we should not have the highest rate of childhood poverty of any major country on earth. And this budget takes us a good way forward in helping us to address that. This budget deals with the outrage that the pharmaceutical industry owns the United States Congress, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. For too many years, their lobbyists, their campaign contributions have resulted in the fact that we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. The president's budget begins to tell the pharmaceutical industry, yeah, Medicare will negotiate prices. We can raise up to $500 billion, which, among other things, we can use to expand Medicare to cover dental, hearing, eyeglasses, and lower the age of eligibility. Millions of younger workers want to get into Medicare. By enacting universal child care pre-K legislation in the president's budget, we can make sure that every child in America, regardless of income or zip code, gets a good start in life. How absurd it is that we still, many of us, continue to live in the 50s where dad went to work and mom stayed home with the kids. Well, you know what, folks? Mom is working. Dad is working. And the children of this country are entitled to high-quality child care. That's what this president's budget begins to address. By passing paid family and medical leave, I believe we remain the only major country on earth, is that right, Ms. Young, that does not guarantee paid family and medical leave. Working mother has a baby today. She's got to go back to work in a week from now. Is that what a civilized society is about? Only major country on earth not to guarantee paid family and medical leave. This budget begins to move us in the right direction. This budget, the president's budget, begins to move us forward in terms of providing progressive tax legislation that finally asks the wealthy and large corporations to begin paying their fair share of taxes so we can begin not only to raise the revenue that we need, but to end the grotesque level of income and wealth inequality that exists in America. So here we are, folks. We have come to the worst year in our lifetimes. We are making progress, but I would hope that everybody recognizes that we still have a very long way to go. And I want to congratulate the President, Ms. Young, and the administration for giving us the framework of moving forward. Now, they've done their job. Now we've got to take the ball and run with it. We've got to refine that bill. It's not a perfect bill. That's our job. That's what the Congress does. So I look forward to working with my colleagues in the Senate and the House with the administration to make this just an extraordinary piece of legislation that finally addresses the needs of working families.